Climate Action Plan Update and General Plan Amendment with certification of final supplemental environmental impact. I know we have a presentation that I've been really looking forward to from our Planning Development Services team. So I'm going to turn it over to the team.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Vargas and Board of Supervisors. Today, staff will present the Climate Action Plan Update, or CAP update, which is the county's plan to take local action to address the climate emergency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2045. Today's request is for the Board of Supervisors to adopt the CAP update and certify its supplemental environmental impact report. Adopting the CAP update would advance the county's commitment to addressing climate change, fulfill requirements set in the 2011 general plan, satisfy a court ruling from the county's 2018 CAP, and provide important streamlining benefits for development projects, including housing projects in the unincorporated area. This presentation will show how the CAP update was developed through robust community engagement to balance environmental, economic, and community interest. How the CAP update will reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the unincorporated area and county operations, and additional land use considerations that would be an option for the board to pursue through the smart growth alternatives. The CAP update is a community-driven, multi-objective plan that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the unincorporated area and county operations at facilities countywide, provide important co-benefits, and advance environmental justice and equity by reducing health disparities, increasing access to green careers, and improving quality of life. And also provide project streamlining benefits for housing and other discretionary development projects under CEQA through the CAP Consistency Review Checklist, which will reduce costs, timelines, and legal risks for projects that comply with the general plan. The CAP update fulfills mitigation requirements set by the 2011 County's General Plan Programmatic Environmental Impact Report and aligns with state legislative greenhouse gas reduction targets, meets the terms of the 2018 court ruling and is legally enforceable, and follows the January 2021 Framework for Our Future for Bold Climate Action Board direction to put the county on a path to reach net zero emissions by 2045 without the use of carbon offsets. The CAP update was developed through a multi-year outreach and engagement process that sought feedback and input from diverse stakeholders while encouraging participation from individuals and groups that are historically under-recognized or underrepresented, including youth and older adults through public workshops, meetings and community events, surveys, public hearings, and the public review process. Outreach and engagement efforts ensured that the CAP is community informed and reflects the lived experiences and voices of residents in the unincorporated area. This is demonstrated through community-defined vision statements that guided the development of measures and actions to ensure a fair distribution of resources while avoiding future unintended negative consequences. Community input is also reflected in the identification of co-benefits or additional beneficial outcomes that can result from CAP implementation. Equity-based outcomes that show tangible outcomes for frontline and priority populations, and community priority scores, which demonstrate how important each CAP measure is to the community and will help guide CAP implementation.
The CAP update includes several technical components that help us take bold climate action, including a greenhouse gas emissions inventory and projections, emissions reduction targets, and reduction measures that include actions the county will take to meet our targets. Additionally, the CAP update supplemental environmental impact report evaluates the environmental impacts of the proposed measures. As mentioned, robust, equitable community outreach and engagement informed the development of each of these components and will continue to be an integral part of the CAP's implementation once adopted. Implementation of the CAP update will reduce greenhouse gases to meet 2030 and 2045 reduction targets and will put the county on a path to reach net zero emissions by 2045. Emissions reductions are achieved through the implementation of cap measures that describe actions the county will take to develop policies, programs, and incentives through ongoing collaboration with stakeholders and the continuation of fostered partnerships in the community. For each measure, the cap update lays out detailed implementation information, including a specified timeline for when each action will achieve quantified emission reductions or contribute towards the net zero goal, an estimated cost to the county to implement the action, county departments that are responsible for implementation of each measure, equity-based outcomes such as prioritized incentives for low-income residents or small business owners that can be monitored and integrated into CAP implementation through an equity implementation framework, and expected co-benefits and community priorities such as water conservation and green workforce training that can be anticipated with measure implementation and are grouped into categories that align with the county's strategic initiatives. The following slides will cover each of the 5 emissions reduction sectors. The built environment and transportation sector outlines 6 measures that contain 12 actions that decarbonize the on-road and off-road vehicle fleet and support active transportation to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. Equity-based outcomes include reduced air pollution burdens and prioritized infrastructure like electric vehicle chargers and bike lanes in frontline communities, which are those communities that will feel the effects of climate change first and worst. Co-benefits include improved mobility options and promoting a green economy through increasing sustainable development and addressing environmental impacts. Emissions reductions from this sector account for about 36% of the reductions for 2030. The energy sector outlines 3 measures that include 6 actions that increase building energy efficiency, renewable energy, and electrification. Equity-based outcomes include reduced utility bills and increased access to career training and certification programs. Co-benefits include improved access to clean technology and community health through increased access to renewable energy sources. Emissions reductions from this sector account for about 45% of the reductions in 2030. The solid waste sector outlines 4 measures that include 4 actions that increase solid waste diversion and the availability of sustainable solid waste facilities. Equity-based outcomes include improved health and safety near landfills and increased redistribution of food to nutrition insecure communities. Co-benefits include improved community health and reduced waste. Emissions reductions from this sector account for about 6% of the reductions in 2030. The water and wastewater sector outlines 3 measures that include 6 actions that decrease water use and increase stormwater collection and wastewater treatment efficiency. Equity-based outcomes include increased education and outreach and prioritized incentives in frontline communities for systems that save and reuse water. Co-benefits include conserving water and support for community-driven projects such as water reuse programs. Emissions reductions for this sector account for about 1% of the reductions for 2030. The agriculture and conservation sector outlines 5 measures that include 7 actions that preserve natural and agricultural lands and improve land management and agricultural practices to increase carbon storage. Equity-based outcomes include increased tree canopy coverage to address urban heat island effects in frontline communities and increased investments in local food systems. Co-benefits include conserving land and reduced wildfire risk through improved land management practices. Emissions reductions from this sector account for about 12% of the reductions for 2030. 9 county departments will implement the CAP measures, which were designed to leverage existing programs and successes from the 2018 CAP's implementation to minimize cost impacts. The CAP's implementation cost analysis summarizes the cost to implement the CAP for the first 5 years for a total of $650 million. 76% of these costs are associated with existing programs that the county is already committed to, minimizing cost impacts and additional resources. The remaining 24% of these total costs come from expanded and new programs. The implementation cost analysis will help implementing departments identify funding sources and plan for budget cycles as the cap is implemented. In addition, a cost-effectiveness and disproportionate cost analysis was developed to better understand the potential cost impacts from cap implementation. It also informs future planning efforts to minimize cost impacts from local code updates. Adoption of the cap would not initially change the building code, and there would be no immediate mandatory development cost increases. Code updates would occur later and be brought to the board in 2026. Discretionary projects under CEQA requirements must incorporate measures that go beyond state code to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions resulting from their development. With a cap in place, development projects consistent with the general plan can choose to use the cap checklist to streamline their CEQA review of greenhouse gas emissions, which will reduce project costs, time, and legal risk. If projects choose not to use the checklist, they would need to use other existing greenhouse gas CEQA thresholds, and many of these thresholds require the same or similar requirements included in the cap checklist. If the cap is adopted, the county would begin a code update process that would monitor state updates to the code anticipated to occur in 2025, initiate additional detailed cost studies, and tailor local code updates to minimize cost impacts and meet the needs of development projects in the unincorporated area while achieving greenhouse gas reduction goals. While future local code updates may result in increased upfront construction costs, these costs would need to be recovered through the energy savings and be cost neutral over time. Future code updates will be developed through continued close coordination with stakeholders, including those who have previously expressed concerns with cost impacts to projects, to ensure requirements are appropriate at the project level and are not cost-prohibitive. The CAP Updates Implementation and Monitoring Program provides details on how the CAP will be updated and maintained to ensure the county is on track towards meeting its reduction targets. After adoption, measure performance will be evaluated through the CAP Annual Monitoring Report, inventory updates at least every 2 years, and CAP updates at least every 5 years to ensure the CAP is working effectively and remains relevant. And finally, similar to the development of the CAP update, equity will play an important role in its implementation. Staff, with guidance from local community-based organizations, developed an equity implementation framework, which will help ensure equitable investments are made in our communities and guide the development of CAP projects, programs, and policies to lead to equity-based outcomes and avoid disproportionate burdens or costs to residents and businesses in the unincorporated area. A supplemental environmental impact report was developed to evaluate the environmental impacts of the proposed CAP measures and project alternatives that would reduce any significant impacts. The supplemental environmental impact report also corrects deficiencies found in the 2018 CAP court ruling. As required by that ruling, it also includes an analysis of 4 smart growth alternatives that are an option for the board to provide direction on in addition to adoption of the CAP update.
Today's request is for the Board of Supervisors to approve the project, which includes adoption of the CAP update and certification of the supplemental environmental impact report. This action would fulfill general plan mitigation requirements, satisfy all requirements of the 2018 CAP court ruling, provide important project streamlining benefits for CEQA greenhouse gas analysis to discretionary projects through the use of a CAP consistency checklist, and put the county on a path to reach net zero emissions by 2045 without the use of carbon offsets through equitable investments in our community. In addition to this action to adopt the CAP, the board may also choose to pursue additional reductions through updated land use patterns as outlined by the Smart Growth Alternatives analysis. In order to satisfy the 2018 CAPS court ruling, 4 smart growth alternatives were analyzed in close coordination with stakeholders to evaluate conceptual land use patterns that, when compared to the existing general plan land use map, would significantly reduce vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, by further focusing development in areas close to existing development and services. Adoption of any of the smart growth alternatives is not required to satisfy the court ruling, but the board may choose to select any smart growth alternative, which would require subsequent planning and technical analysis stakeholder engagement, and additional CEQA analysis before they are adopted at a future hearing. The smart growth alternatives include 3 geographic-based alternatives, a fire-safe and VMT-efficient alternative that identifies areas outside high and very high fire risk and within VMT-efficient areas, a village support areas alternative that includes areas within 1/2 mile of established villages throughout the unincorporated area, and a sustainable community strategy alternative that focuses on the mobility hubs located in the unincorporated area as defined by SANDAG's 2021 regional plan. A 4th alternative includes general plan goal and policy edits to further enhance the smart growth principles included in the general plan. If the board is interested in pursuing any of the smart growth alternative concepts, the board may select one or multiple smart growth alternatives to advance for further analysis, in addition to adoption of the CAP update and certification of the supplemental environmental impact report. These could be implemented over a shorter period of time through a smart growth zoning overlay with incentives for development, or over a longer period of time through zoning, land use changes, or other planning mechanisms or efforts. The timeline depends on the alternative selected and direction provided. To better align further analysis of smart growth alternatives with ongoing projects that consider sustainable land use patterns, it is recommended that if any of the smart growth alternatives is selected for future analysis, that this work is directed under the board-initiated Sustainable Land Use Framework for schedule, staffing, outreach, and budget efficiency. The board may also choose to not select a smart growth alternative. Staff brought the project to the Planning Commission for their consideration, and the Commission voted unanimously to approve the project, which includes adoption of the CAP update and certification of the Supplemental Environmental Impact Report. Today's request is for the Board of Supervisors to approve the project. This action by the board would include adoption of the Supplemental Environmental Impact Report CEQA findings, a greenhouse gas threshold of significance and CAP consistency review checklist, and a general plan amendment. Review and selection of a smart growth alternative is not required as part of today's action, but the board may select any of the smart growth alternatives for further analysis and action at a future hearing. This concludes the presentation on the CAP update, and staff are available for questions.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and move.
Have 40 individuals in person. Also like to note for the 60 were in favor, 4 were in opposition, and 4 were neutral. Also, 1 individual registered their support but did not wish to address the board today. For any individuals that are requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. That are in favor of and on the arrows until it is your turn. 3, I'd like to invite Anderson. To begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Lee. Sierra Club, San Diego. 1,000 members and 26,000. I'm grateful that we are finally on the verge of achieving an action plan in the county after Sierra Club's 2 successful lawsuits. It's on your screen there. We've been by 14 respected climate action environment to urge you to support the smart growth alternative described in the environmental impact report, aptly called the fire safe and VMT efficient alternative. This alternative will direct development away from high and very high wildfire zones, reduce greenhouse pollution, decrease traffic, and preserve wildlands and endangered species. Insurance possible, which, as we all know, is either unavailable or enormously expensive in high fire areas. And affordability for future home buyers. Today, after over a decade of working towards this, really happy to see this, and so let's get it done right this time. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Peter Anderson, a volunteer officer of Sierra Club, and I'm proud to say we support the Climate Action Plan and urge its adoption. Instead of the endless litigation we've been involved in with the county over the last decade and a half, this time we really tried a collaboration by offering creative ideas and engaging in community meetings and planning committee meetings, and what we came up with, I think, is pretty good. We're here to advocate not only for the CAP, but for the smart growth alternative entitled the fire safe and VMT efficient alternative. That the VMT efficient alternative would shift development away from the high and the very high fire zones. Of course, fire is tremendously disruptive to homeowners, to people's lives, but it also produces greenhouse gas. So preventing fire in these areas would also be a bonus for the Climate Action Plan. By making commute shorter, according to their report, it reduces greenhouse gas or VMT by 6% and a corresponding amount of VMT. It lowers air pollution. It will reduce traffic. It would not restrict new housing development, only its location. Same number of units could be built. They just would be built in the fire-safe area. It preserves wildlands and endangered species. It would preserve sensitive habitats and create, which is also a carbon sink, also enhancing the plan. It would reduce the chance of fire ignition, which normally start at the boundary. If implemented, this is anticipated to reduce greenhouse gas by 6.6%. It can be easily implemented with an overlay zone, and give me the final. It's imperative we do this because, as you know, fires are prevalent.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charles Riley. I am an organizer with the Sierra Club working in the South Bay. Real quick on this slide, these are just some headlines from the last few months of different fire evacuations that have happened across San Diego County. It's imperative that we do not build in high fire severity zones to keep our communities safe. Next slide, please. This map here shows, on the left, the smart growth overlay map created by county staff. On the right, it shows the fire severity map. We should not encourage new housing development in very high fire severity zones. It is dangerous, it is reckless, and it is unaffordable. Next slide, please. Also, building in safer areas will also mean that fire insurance is more attainable. Currently, fire insurers are fleeing the state, and when homes are in these very high fire severity zones, many cannot afford or simply cannot even attain fire insurance. This map here shows the fire safe overlay map on top of the village support overlay map. Sorry, the fire severity map over the village overlay map. And as you can see, the village, a lot of where housing would be shifted in the village plan would be in these very high wildfire zones, which again is dangerous and makes new homes unattainable and unaffordable. Next slide, please. This slide here has a few quotes from some fire experts in the field. Tom Porter of CAL FIRE states that construction of new homes in remote areas makes it more challenging and costly to protect lives. With brush fires turning up all over Southern California this week alone, we must take this warning seriously and adopt the fire safe plan. Next slide, please. Lastly, the Sierra Club commissioned a housing study on housing prices in 2023 in the unincorporated parts of the county from a respected consulting firm named John Burns Research and Consulting. The 4 color bars represent small, medium, large, and very large home sale prices from 2023. We unfortunately can quickly see that some of the highest selling prices came from very high wildfire risks. This chart does not take into account the very real fire insurance crisis our state is facing. And I'll now turn it over to Dr. Ronald Asklin.
Thank you. Call the next 3 speakers. I believe it's.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Ronald Asklin, Conservation Chair of the San Diego Sierra Club. I'd like to thank county staff for the detailed explanation given of households moved from community plan areas into 2 smart growth alternatives presented in Appendix C Smart Growth Alternative VMT Forecast. The left side of this slide shows households moved from CPAs to VMT efficient areas that are fire safe compared to the right side that shows households moved from CPAs to village support areas. As shown in the next slide, we determined the net moves under each alternative by comparing the number of households moved into fire-safe versus village support areas in each of the CPAs. Data from John Burns Research and Consulting was then used to calculate the weighted average home prices for homes sold in 2023 based on sales from 5,309 homes. The results showed that the weighted average home sale price was $777,000 for the fire-safe and VMT-efficient alternative areas versus $853,000 for the village support areas. In conclusion, the 2023 home sale prices were $76,000 lower for homes sold into fire-safe areas versus village support areas. Next slide. The San Diego Sierra Club, along with 16 other organizations and planning groups, urge you to adopt the fire-safe and VMT-efficient smart growth alternative. This alternative will direct development away from high and very high wildfire zones, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, lower air pollution, decrease traffic, and preserve wildlands and endangered species. Another factor to consider is emergency evacuation. If we go with a plan like the village support areas, it's going to make fire evacuation much more dangerous. Thank you.
Nguyen. I am a Sierra Club member and a San Diego resident, District 3. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to something I am very passionate about, that is climate change and the threat that climate change is to our current way of life if we don't act swiftly. Please support the fire-safe and VMT-efficient alternative. This alternative versus the others will reduce greenhouse gases, lower VMT, lower pollution and reduce traffic, shift development away from the high and very high wildfire zones. This is a no-brainer. These last few days, heat and evacuations in Southern California is another wake-up call. This alternative is not about reducing the number of units for development, but to shift development away from places where the fires tend to start, primarily in the suburban wildlands boundaries. This alternative also preserves wildlands, protects endangered species, and saves coastal sage scrub and chaparral, which are excellent at carbon sequestration. Please support this alternative. It is the most climate and eco-friendly alternative. Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Preston Brown. I'm a 15-year member of the Hamul del Zura Community Planning Group, and our group voted last week to support the fire-safe low VMT alternative. We commend the county staff for providing a really rich array of alternatives that could work in coordination with each other. A tremendous amount of thought has gone into this, and we think that the most effective way, the most effective alternative would serve as a really good guideline and strict parameters for everything else that the Climate Action Plan is trying to accomplish. Emergency evacuation from wildland fires remains a constant threat and challenge for the Hamul del Zura community. The current road infrastructure relies on an aging 2-lane highway, SR 94, known as Old Campo Road. It is in dire need of major investments from Sandag and Caltrans. Our group has scheduled a tour with representatives from Sandag and Caltrans and with the CAL FIRE battalion chief in attendance to observe the configuration and evacuation routes and witness the demands of the current traffic flows on SR 94. Ramona did this 2 weeks ago. We'll be the second community group to do this. And we've also requested that an updated traffic study be conducted to accurately determine the necessary improvements. And to our knowledge, this has not been done. And since the year 2000, all known studies are fragmented, piecemeal, and have only been conducted by developers representing their own interests. So we strongly recommend that this would be very valuable for the residents of the East.
Thank you. I'll call the next 3 speakers: Summer Light, B. Mintmiller, and Robert Gurman.
My name is Summer Light. Thank you for this opportunity to provide comments on the San Diego County Climate Change Action Plan. I ask you to please adopt one of the alternative smart growth plans called the Fire Safe and Vehicle Efficient Alternative as the primary plan, because the plan would restrict development in high and very high fire zones. It would reduce greenhouse gas emissions, lower air pollution, reduce traffic. It would not reduce housing and preserve wildlands and endangered species. We urge you to support this growth alternative, which will keep our communities safer and make our home ownership more attainable. I can tell you firsthand, as someone who lives in a high-risk fire zone, that my homeowner's insurance is now 5 times the amount it was years ago. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Vargas, board members, and staff. My name is B. Miller. I'm a volunteer representing San Diego 350, and I live in the city of San Diego. Given the urgency of the climate crisis, it is encouraging to see that the county's framework for the future calls on the CAP update to achieve, at a minimum, the SB 32 greenhouse gas emissions reductions of 40% below 1990 levels by 2030, and to meet a goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2035 to 2045. San Diego 350 supports the CAP update. However, implementation of the CAP must be data-driven to ensure that equity and climate are prioritized and safeguarded. And a regulatory framework needs to be created to guarantee that the climate goals for 2030 are met. Also, funding for the climate equity has to be adequate to ensure that the CAP successfully implements the policies. Finally, please vote for the Fire Safe and VMT Efficient Alternative Plan. And I want to thank the board members and county staff for your service. Thank you.
Robert Gurman. My support for agenda item number 6 is lukewarm at best. The environmental groups in San Diego County are a group, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I hope they're a bunch of phonies. Not to include aviation, the pollution from aviation, and not to discuss leaded fuel, I'm a little pissed. Leaded fuel, when the state of California just passed Bill 1193 to ban leaded fuel, and San Diego County won't even include or discuss, along with the environmental groups, anything about air pollution from aircraft when we have 16 airports is disgusting. The next comment I would like to make, please consider San Diego County airports for storage of batteries. They're in the center of a lot of cities. They're wide open. If there's a problem, they have easy access to put them out.
I'm just going to ask you, because I want to make sure that I'm fair to everyone, if you could please stay on topic, and if you have any comments on the other item, feel free to reach out to my office.
I will excuse myself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call the next 3 speakers: Jen LeBron, Joe, I believe it's Hood, and JP Thedberg.
Okay, excuse me. Feel free to have conversations outside the chambers. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Good afternoon, honorable supervisors. I'm Jen LeBron with San Diego Community Power. As the electricity generation provider for nearly 1 million customers across San Diego County, Community Power strongly encourages the board to adopt the Climate Action Plan today. The County of San Diego has been a key partner to our organization since it voted to become one of our member agencies in 2019. The county played a critical role in our adoption of a goal to have 15% of all renewable power to be generated by local sources. And most recently, the county and Community Power teamed up to create the state of California's newest regional energy network, which is poised to bring more than $120 million in energy efficiency programs to the region through 2027. This collaboration between the county and the San Diego Community Power underscores our shared commitment to a sustainable future. Adopting the Climate Action Plan update is another step in the right direction. The emphasis on equity and environmental justice will ensure that all communities, especially our communities of concern, will benefit from the transition to a greener future. Additionally, streamlining development processes to allow for more efficient implementation of sustainable projects will create workforce development opportunities throughout our region. As the county moves forward on the implementation of its Climate Action Plan, San Diego Community Power remains committed to continuing our partnership to ensure that San Diegans can benefit from cleaner air and a more sustainable future. We urge you to vote in favor of this plan and continue leading the way toward a healthier, more equitable San Diego County. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Joe Hood, President of North County Climate Change Alliance. County staff has prepared a reasonable cap, albeit with some important omissions. One, we need much more ongoing citizen involvement, equity, dashboards, and quantified progress measures. Two, we need actions for climate finance and more. Recent peer-reviewed science tabs the social cost of carbon at $1,056 a ton, resulting in a cost to clean up this year's emissions of only $41 trillion. Johan Rockstrom, head of the Potsdam Institute, says that the global cost of climate change may be $36 trillion per year by 2050 if we don't act forcefully. The burdens of losses due to our actions will be nearly insurmountable challenge for our children and grandchildren. In 2023, the U.S. had 28 $1 billion plus climate losses, more than one every 2 weeks. July 22nd was the hottest day in recorded history, and we've had our hottest weather ever this past week. On Monday, 14 active wildfires were burning across California, with one so intense it created its own weather pattern. Choosing other than the fire-safe option would be irresponsible. What will it take for us to wake up? Now is code red for humanity. Please choose the fire-safe, low VMT option, and then ask the county staff for more.
Thank you. Call the next three speakers: Karina Contreras, Anthony Dang, and Ali Dressel.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Serena Pelka, and I'm a policy advocate with Climate Action Campaign. We are really excited
I'm so sorry, I haven't called you yet.
Ali isn't here this afternoon. Would I be after Anthony and Karina?
Yeah, but you got to wait till you're called. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yep. So we have Anthony Dang and Ali. You'll be in the next group.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Anthony Dang. I'm the Policy and Community Outreach Manager of the Climate Action Campaign. In addition to adopting the county cap, the county should commit to investing at least 20% of the cap budget into communities of concern. Communities hit first and hardest by the climate crisis are also communities who have been historically underinvested in, leaving them with inadequate infrastructure. This 20% allocation would come out of the already agreed upon 5-year budget of $650 million for the cap. This is not additional funding. This would be approximately at least $26 million invested in communities of concern every year for 5 years for all sorts of cap projects such as safe streets, pedestrian and bike infrastructure, park enhancements, and more. To further institutionalize equity in the cap, we recommend developing a tool similar to the City of San Diego's Climate Equity Index, which uses data from multiple data sources, including CalEnviroscreen, to determine who's prioritized for the 20% investment into communities of concern. It is critical we use more than just CalEnviroscreen because this data source alone is imperfect and does not always accurately identify communities who have been underinvested in or are experiencing climate injustices. Other data sources to consider for criteria are the County of San Diego Vulnerability Assessment and Adaptation Report, as well as data from the California Healthy Places Index. We also applaud the county for developing an environmental justice working group who can also determine how funding is spent. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Karina Contreras. I had confusing information as to whether or not I could show you our map. Sierra Club actually had it up. It is an overlay between the fire safe alternative and building out the villages. And we did send it to you. I have it right here, but I'm not allowed to show it to you in person. I was told that I could not show it.
Can we just go ahead and let them stand right there and show it to us? Yeah, please. Thank you. Right there? Yeah. If it's an issue, yeah, right there. Just don't throw it at us.
Thank you so much. So what I wanted to point out, and this is a really good example, is Ramona. On the village build out, you're actually building right into the very high and high fire safe, very high and high fire zones. But this is the same case for a lot of the villages. So I appreciate you letting me show that. We did send it to you. You know, if we are going to produce in San Diego County the homes that were promised in the 2011 general plan, not only do you have to adopt this cap, but we want to make sure these are forever homes, meaning that folks, if they want to age in place, they can. The sticker price of a home in a high and very high fire risk zone is just that. It's one price with an ongoing insurance liability. In order to be able to build affordable by design, we have to look at where it's efficient and safe to do so. So we urge you here in this chamber, a lot of us are coming forward to urge you to please adopt the cap and move forward with the fire safe and VMT efficient alternative. It is the smart way to go. And that way, when folks get the keys to their home, they know they will have a forever home, and they will be so thankful to you. Let's get the homes promised online. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the next 3 speakers, Serena Pelka, Corey Schumacher, and Pamela Heatherton.
Thank you. Apologies for the reorder. Good afternoon. My name is Serena Pelka. I'm a policy advocate at Climate Action Campaign. As I said, we are extremely excited to support the adoption of the County Climate Action Plan, as it is a necessary tool to protect the places and people that our communities love from the impacts of extreme heat, wildfires, devastating flooding, air pollution, and coastal erosion. The benefits of the cap will only occur with timely and equitable implementation. The building electrification strategies alone account for over 32% of the entire greenhouse gas reductions in the cap. This strategy must be prioritized during implementation. The developed equity implementation framework also has the potential to institutionalize equity in the cap by prioritizing communities who are hit first and hardest by the climate crisis. Thank you so much to staff for all of your thoughtful work. We recommend monitoring of CAP implementation twice a year, including this equity implementation framework, so the Board of Supervisors and community members can ensure communities of concern are being prioritized as we move forward with climate action implementation and improving quality of life for communities in the county. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon again, Honorable Supervisors. Corey Schumacher on behalf of the 3,700 union electricians and power professionals of IBW 569, here before you today to support the CAP and encourage you to as well. This will mark a momentous day as we commit to strong goals and meaningful pathways to provide clean energy throughout the county, throughout operations, and to unincorporated communities. Adopting the CAP and its implementation will create high-road, high-wage local jobs that we need to thrive. Today, we also want to focus on a key equity issue identified in the CAP, building decarbonization. Cost should not be a barrier to the co-benefits of clean air and public health resulting from building electrification. And that's why we are here to encourage the board to allocate at least 20% of the CAP budget investments to those communities that have been historically redlined and underinvested in both the unincorporated and incorporated areas of the county. Investing 20% of the CAP budget in traditionally underinvested communities will ensure an equitable transition to electrification, which we wholeheartedly support. Thank you for all your work on this.
Good afternoon, Chair Vargas and supervisors and staff. And I really love meeting with you guys once a month. Thank you for allowing us to do that. My name is Pam Hetherington, and I represent the Environmental Center of San Diego. We are supportive of the proposed climate action plan, but only with the inclusion of the fire-safe and VMT-efficient alternative. And we'd also like to see a community equity and resilience fund to address the inequities over time. You're close to achieving a reasonable CAP. Close, but not quite there yet. You must choose the fire-safe and VMT-efficient alternative, inclusive of a community equity and resilience fund. This is the closest our county will come to a solid, reasonable, and equitable climate action plan. It is the combination that is foundational to the motto you have sworn to uphold. The noblest motive is the public good. We appreciate the opportunity to make these comments and hope that you will see this decision as the wise and smart way to go. Thank you kindly.
Thank you. Call the next three speakers: Dan Silver, Sonia Robinson, and Cesar Javier.
Chair Vargas, members of the board, good afternoon. I'm Dan Silver with Endangered Habitats League, stakeholder since 1992. We support adoption of the CAP, but with the vital inclusion of the fire-safe and VMT-efficient alternative. We also endorse the Community Equity Fund. This is an historic fork in the road: smart growth or sprawl into fire zones, agricultural green belts or high GHG emissions. The fire-safe and VMT-efficient alternative is the right direction, right for public safety and right for affordable, multifamily housing near jobs, transportation, and services. As fires rage, and as we've heard, the least affordable homes are those that burn. Unlike the other smart growth alternatives, the fire-safe and VMT-efficient is eminently feasible. It would be implemented quickly and cost-effectively through overlays and incentives. Not eliminating anything, it is a soft path that promotes higher density, walkable communities within the framework of the existing general plan. It is a necessary bridge to the sustainable land use framework, which is years in the future. It would follow the direction already set by your board in its housing element and the development feasibility analysis for infill. The Community Equity Fund would address historic inequities. Another positive feature of this alternative is that, really to state the obvious, it makes more new housing exempt from VMT mitigation. This will facilitate housing production. Additionally, we urge that the general plan, goal, and policy edits move forward. These are important. Finally, we oppose the village support alternative as putting growth outside of villages where there is already ample capacity. Thank you.
Cesar Javier, family of soldiers, dead, sick, retired, active. We support this revision. This is sharpening our weapon. This is a war. And we must be familiar with the principles to win the war. Do we have the Luz at Air Pollution Control District here? Do we have the Luz County? Do we have the blue from the city, the core city of this region? Where are they? Where are our chief commander here at the Naval Force? This is a war. General, this is a war. Our enemy is not nature. We can never defeat nature. But we can do something to protect from nature. From air pollution, from water pollution, from food pollution, noise, odor, pollution, and even light pollution, impacting potentially humans and the thing, flora and fauna. When we mean protection, we mean reduction to a set standard. Unfortunately, this climate change action plan has not been a subject and amongst urgent one as a subject of discussion. We just attended many community planning group. Ma'am Monica Steve, 8 planning group in the city of San Diego. And we have never had.
Thank you. Thank you. Your time's up. We'll call the final 2 speakers in favor. Lori Saldana and Sean Kilkenny.
John Kilkenny. I am co-founder and partner of Nolan Communities. We believe the climate crisis is real and acknowledge the inherent conflict of building homes versus combating climate change. We support adoption of a legally compliant cap, but have reservations about the smart growth alternatives. You see, the general plan and village concept largely moved development to more westerly communities, but is yet to transform these communities for many reasons, including because villages are already developed with lower intensity land uses such as self-storage, mobile home parks, low-rise apartments, and vacant underutilized commercial, retail, and office uses. Village areas are more fragmented, resulting in smaller sites that face zoning challenges. And many of these areas lack the infrastructure or services, including high-quality schools, that young families demand. These are the exact types of challenges the county is already reviewing through the development feasibility analysis. Under this board's direction, tools like the inclusionary ordinance, housing options, housing blueprint, development feasibility analysis, removing barriers to housing, sustainable land use framework, and the housing element implementation plan are being considered together under the chairwoman's motions from just 2 weeks ago. Any proposed revisions to planned land uses or direction to consider fire-safe and VMT-efficient alternative would conflict with that direction. It would betray the general plan, and it would be tantamount to death by 1,000 cuts. The county's own analysis on the transportation study guidelines found that there are only 2,160 planned units in VMT-efficient areas, or 4% of the total planned housing units in the general plan. In order to accommodate the general plan build out of this small of an area, the county would have to increase densities by an average of 25 times the existing planned densities. That's not a zoning overlay, that's a general plan amendment, because you cannot increase densities through zoning. It is illegal. Please have staff confirm this. Further, the county's independent financial analysis for the inclusionary ordinance confirmed that development densities at greater than 30 DUs per acre is economically infeasible. A deal is a deal, and the villages were the deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Call those speakers now in opposition. Mike Bullock, Lauren, I believe it's Cazares, and Michael Brando.
Good afternoon. Honorable Board, I'm Mike Bullock, a retired Lockheed Martin senior staff systems engineer. Our first climate mandate is 2030, SB 32. The IPCC works towards 2030. Failure is destabilization. No one is talking about this. The draft Climate Action Plan ignores the feasible mitigation measure of operating the county employee car parking for the financial gain of county employees. Staff says this is infeasible because it can't guarantee that the unions would agree to the system. This does require coordination between the potential parking vendors and the unions. The parking requirements document needs to specify that even employees that drive every day will earn more money with the new system. More money for all employees would cause the unions to favor the plan. Selecting a vendor that wants to spread this system to other employers and other types of parking, such as on-street, mixed-use, shopping centers, and so on, would be critically important. An employee would get earnings in proportion to the time they spend at work. Parking would be available to all drivers, not just employees. If they were in a car with a license plate or had another method so the car could be associated with an account. Work from home necessitates better managed parking. The vendor will know how to monetize unused parking, monetize parking use data, monetize electricity generated by solar canopies. Free parking.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Vargas, Vice Chair Lawson-Remer, and Board of Supervisors and staff. My name is Lauren Casares, Policy Advisor at the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce, whose mission is to make the San Diego region the best place to live and work. We represent over 2,200 member businesses and 300,000 jobs regionally. And I want to begin by acknowledging the critical importance of balancing environmental, economic, and community interests. So I've got some more general, less specific comments today. The Chamber is supportive of environmental goals to transition to clean energy, but we strongly believe this must be implemented with economic realities of our region in mind. As we have previously shared, the Chamber uses a framework to review climate action plans, which includes general support for creating incentive and trade-in programs, encouragement of collaborative efforts with the private sector, commitment to economic feasibility, and urging municipal demonstration and the requirement of cost-benefit analyses. Many of these requests have been fulfilled by PDS in this updated draft. However, we believe a few items should be rephrased or removed from the proposed cap and or the cap checklist. While we are very supportive of the installation of vehicle charging stations throughout the county, these installations must be economically feasible. We ask that any mandate to construct this equipment should be aligned with demand rather than an arbitrary requirement to build the costly infrastructure. The Chamber is also supportive of increasing transit availability and frequency, but we caution the transportation demand management programs can sometimes cause undue harm to employees by disrupting established commutes. Therefore, expanding voluntary programs with incentives for ride sharing should also be prioritized in this cap. Finally, the Chamber and our coalition of business organizations are opposed to rigid building electrification mandates due to the lack of feasibility and illegality per the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We believe in green energy while also understanding that some operations such as labs, hospitals, and restaurants require natural gas. The state of California already has some of the most stringent energy efficiency requirements in the world, and once again, we thank you for your work, and I look forward to continue working with you.
Thank you. And I'll call our last speaker, Lori Filer. As Lori is coming down, I'll recall those that I called earlier that didn't come to speak for one last chance: JP Thurberg, Ollie Dressel, Sonia Robinson, Lori Saldana, and Michael Brando.
Good afternoon, Chair Vargas and Supervisors. My name is Lori Holt-Filer, President of the Building Industry Association of San Diego County, and I'd like to thank staff for the time that they have taken to meet with us and hear the concerns that we have raised. We are part of a coalition that has submitted a number of comments to staff during the course of developing the draft plan, and the letter has been sent to you prior to this hearing today. But I'd like to talk about 3 different points. Our natural concern is that any additional regulatory requirements that increase the cost of housing production will only exacerbate our current housing crisis. The average cost of a single-family home in San Diego has now surpassed $1 million, and traditionally, to be able to buy a home in the unincorporated area has been less than the county average, and you should protect that. We know, and staff has acknowledged, transportation is the leading source of GHG emissions. We also know that because of our housing crisis, commuters are traveling from outside the city and even the county, further exacerbating GHG emissions. The simple solution to reduce emissions is to simply allow for more homes to be built in San Diego to meet the needs of our residents that are working in the county. And new homes are fire-safe homes. They're the safest homes that we have. Any decisions that remove the ability to allow for this co-location would simply force people to seek their jobs, their services, or their housing further away, significantly increasing vehicle miles traveled. Second, the county released its cost-effectiveness and disproportionate analysis to, in part, try and measure the cost impact to the private sector from the implementation measures. Unfortunately, the analysis is wholly inadequate. The analysis gives a false impression that the upfront costs to comply with the actions included in the cap are minimal. And at no point were our members asked to provide input, and we'd be happy to do so in the future.
Thank you. We'll now hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted. You'll hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Again, I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we'll go ahead and begin with our first caller.
Good afternoon, Chair Vargas, board members, and staff. My name is Rita Clement, and I live in Chula Vista. I'm a volunteer with San Diego 350. I am speaking in support of item number 6. We recommend a vote for the fire safe and VMT efficient alternative plan. We also support the Community Equity Fund. I appreciate the hard work done by the staff to inform the board members of the issues facing the community. We must lower vehicle miles traveled by 3 to 4% yearly. This is essential if we want to lower the amount of greenhouse gases released into the atmosphere and meet our climate action plan goals. CAPD is supposed to be a living document. We were told it would be a revolutionary vision. CAPD is the Climate Action Plan for Transportation. We recommend a vote for the Fire Safe and BMT Efficient Alternative Plan. And thank you for your continued work to implement solutions to lower greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller. Paul, I'm not sure what's going on with your phone. We'll come back to you. We'll go to the next caller. Next caller is Audra. You may need to unmute yourself. Okay, we'll come back to you. Christina, can you hear us? I think we may need to take a break to address the system.
Sure.
Hopefully.
Okay. We're going to take a, hopefully, 5-minute break to address the technical difficulties. Let's go ahead. Oh.
We are back and apologize for the technical issue we had. For any of the callers that tried to speak, you'll have your time back for 2 minutes. We're going to start with Christina Marquez. We're going to move her into the speaker queue. And Christina, as soon as you can hear us, you can begin your comments.
Yep, good afternoon. I did hear Audra try and speak, let you know. Good afternoon, Christina Marquez on behalf of IBEW 569 and 3,700 union electricians and power professionals in San Diego and Imperial counties. IBEW 569 has been a long-time proponent to fight climate change, and we urge the board to support the cap. Communities are being devastated by flooding, deadly heat waves, and collapsing coastlines and wildfires. And families living in the front lines of pollution are hit first and worst. Some of them are our members. As we move forward to adopt the Climate Action Plan today, selecting the fire-safe and VMT-efficient smart growth alternative is so important because families cannot afford homes being built in high fire hazard areas due to skyrocketing home insurance rates, as many people have already said. It would be irresponsible to encourage developing housing in high fire hazard areas because it creates inequitable, unaffordable housing and will put families' livelihoods at risk. Please move forward with the fire-safe and VMT-efficient smart growth alternatives to ensure housing is affordable, safe, and built near good union jobs. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Go to our next speaker.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Audra. You can begin your comments.
Thank you. So thank you, Christina, as well. Even though we don't necessarily see eye to eye, I'm actually at the 9/11 ceremony on the Midway, which is where you guys should be. I know I'm off topic, but still. I wanted to give you guys a warm handoff of this propaganda update because it's sad that we have to lie to the people in order to get them to go along with this whole shenanigans, just kind of like 9/11 and the lies that we've been told happened when it was our own government that did this to us, and it's sad to have to memorialize these people like this as the lie perpetuates, but it's a problem when we don't live in truth, and I think it's important for people to understand where this climate action plan comes from. It comes from the United Nations. But it isn't about protecting the planet because this is your climate, God, like I was telling you before in the earlier items, that you will sacrifice anything in order to serve this God. And we shouldn't be sacrificing the people and their freedom or anything, their livelihoods or their lives, just to be pushing something that's actually to enslave the people. There's nothing that you're doing that's ever going to save the planet. All of the technology that you want to use that you are pretending is green actually needs and produces greenhouse gases are so dire to get rid of. human beings. And the more carbon you have, the greener the world looks, the bigger things get. And I mean, just look at CO2 when it's, or say marijuana or whatever it is, it makes it flourish. It doesn't make it die. And so when we're sitting here and we're telling people all of these lies, it just reminds me of like being where I'm at right now and how we can't continue down that path, that we must live in truth. And even if you guys want to sit and spew your propaganda, you can do that, but then there's people that are going to be coming in and telling the truth. And that's why people should do their own due diligence and research themselves and actually look at what the United Nations Agenda 21, 2030, 2050 is and what its purpose is. It has nothing to do with the planet, but it's all about putting people in.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to our next caller.
Good afternoon, Chair Vargas and Supervisors. My name is Karina Gonzalez, and I am the Deputy Director with Hammond Climate Solutions Foundation. San Diego County is experiencing firsthand the effects of the climate crisis as we experience heat waves, flooding, collapsing coastlines, and wildfires. This climate action plan is long, long overdue and will finally give the county a guide to cut emissions and begin to address the climate crisis. This plan is a good first step, but we need transparency when it comes to how the plan is being implemented. Therefore, we recommend a requirement for a biannual implementation report alongside the adoption of the CAP. Furthermore, this plan must prioritize equity in our most vulnerable communities. In order to address the lack of adequate infrastructure and underinvestment in these communities have experienced, we recommend carving out a community equity and resilience fund. We cannot continue to leave our communities vulnerable to extreme heat, flood, and fires that are exacerbated by the climate crisis. I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on this important policy and urge you all to adopt the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to our next caller.
Hi, Oliver Twist calling in today for my bit part in today's political theater, as we have a chamber filled with special interest stakeholders. Some are professional lobbyists. By the way, that should be a policy. If people are being paid to speak, that should be disclosed. I'm tired of seeing people treated as commodities by this county. They pretend to care about them, but then they want to herd us into little boxes. So I am asking that you start treating people with dignity, not as a commodity to be managed. Also, the name of this is very interesting when you call it fire safe, because people that buy into that either have not visited the backcountry or looked at a map and see the high severity. It's not like there's some pocket of Alpine or Ramona that's considered fire safe. The whole community is in red for insurance. So to think if you build in one part of a rural area that it will be cheaper insurance, that is a fallacy, and you need to please get educated. The other thing is to penalize the rural areas on greenhouse gases. Quit telling us to drive less and instead perhaps consider making smog requirements for vehicles coming over from Mexico, that unless that they pass, because there's no way that we should be having to compensate for greenhouse gases that come from across the border for vehicles that emit at a higher level. So please consider that and no to this measure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller.
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Freitas, and I'm here representing Climate Reality Project San Diego and my grandchildren. As a retired County of San Diego employee who has attended these meetings, I want to thank you for your service on the board. What you do is vital and not easy. As you may know, the goal of Climate Reality is a healthy, clean, and prosperous planet for all humankind, and that is why we strongly support the fire-safe and BMT-efficient smart growth alternatives. By reducing sprawl and habitat fragmentation, but not the number of houses that can be built, it will reduce the chances of wildfire, reduce vehicle miles traveled, and preserve more of our beautiful natural habitat that provides so many ecosystem services, like carbon sequestration, watershed management, supporting biodiversity, and opportunities for recreation. On behalf of Climate Reality Project San Diego and both current and future generations, we urge the Board of Supervisors to adopt the fire-safe and VMT-efficient smart growth alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller.
Consuelo here. Hi. Yes, amen to Oliver Twist and Audra. And let me start off by asking the board and all of you VMT propaganda promoters, did you all come on the trolley or the bus? Did you bike? You're right, Robert Gurman. A bunch of phonies. That's what's in here today. And as far as the Sierra Club, lockstep, part of the World Economic Forum, UN agenda, that is the agenda for the 21st century. They have to have things done by 2030, 2050, and so on. This is the thing. Many of these people are entirely out of touch. They have no clue except for what's in their face, around them. And yeah, let's not forget the fact that they're getting paid. So many people will be affected by this. I just wanted to point out the double standards of this chairwoman. What a hypocrite, not for nothing. Unbelievable, the double standards and how you treat the people speaking when you don't like them. Did you also, as far as like the weather being the hottest week, hello, there are 5G cell towers every mile, if not every corner, and we're surrounded by radiation. That means nothing, right? And the fact that we are being sprayed heavily by, there's heavy metals in the sky, that has nothing to do with it either, right? But let's just focus on things that are, in fact, a part of this UN agenda. It's amazing. You guys can still get the program. They sell it on Amazon. You can see step by step. It's the blueprint of what, in fact, is happening.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to our next caller.
Paul Bold, interestingly, you mentioned natural climate changes over the ages, but then focused on GHG. If you want to solve a big problem, you want to focus on the big problem, big picture thinking, not on GHGs, which are a serious but relatively minor portion of the whole scheme. You want to amend the county's code by 2026 to require all electric equipment in new construction in the unincorporated area. There are too many blackouts there, and the grid isn't ready. They seem to be picking on the unincorporated area, and you should allow for other equipment that reduces GHG emissions like solar or wind powered. One good thing I saw was support the transition to clean hydrogen fuel for medium and heavy-duty vehicles on page 841. I like this backhanded acknowledgement that EVs and BESS are way too dangerous. Page 832 has a table of county GHG emissions dated 2019, and the table of unincorporated area carbon stock from 2016. A lot has changed since then. More EVs with different commuting habits, cleaner utilities, change.
Paul, we lost you. We can't hear you anymore. All right, we'll go to our next caller.
Gambler here. How you guys doing? So I got a question for you. The world is heating up, right? Why is it, two things. Why is it that a bunch of people lied and said we had record heat? recently when the hottest day ever recorded on Earth was July 10th, 1913, when the temperatures was at, 134? And we haven't seen that since. So if there's global warming happening, wouldn't we expect to see higher numbers, within like 100 years? Not happening. But we want to go ahead and create all these battery storage places. But in order to get the batteries, we need to use slave labor. And we need to go ahead and destroy large lots of land, digging a humongous hole into it. We also want to go ahead and basically remove the Tilim buckwheat up in Nevada, because that's the only place it grows. It grows on the mountains of lithium that we want for our batteries. That will only last for, a period of time, and then we need to go ahead and throw them away. So maybe we'll just throw them back into the holes that we dug up, and then just make it so that no one goes around that area for how many years until, it finally becomes habitable again? I mean, I don't understand why you guys lie constantly to the people. There are other alternatives, and this whole Green New Deal is a bunch of bullshit. You could go ahead and make fuel by algae. But no, we don't want to go ahead and talk about that. We could pull carbon from the air. We don't want to talk about that. We could turn plastic into fuel. We don't want to talk about that. There are so many other alternatives instead of destroying our planet to get your personal needs met.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to our next caller.
Truth. How did we end up here? The Sierra Club and other climate delusionist extremists waging lawfare against the county. What United Nations Agenda 21 supporting big money entity is funding their operations that they can also afford campaign donations countrywide. They don't even care about lithium fires. Until battery energy storage sites, solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles are permanently banned, harmful emissions are never going to end. They're actually going to increase due to all the toxic lithium fires. Any real cap would put a cap on their existence, and any real climate activists would boycott them. GHG reduction to get the state and federal money, yet Nora is being driven around in a big gas-guzzling SUV at a cost of $41,000 a month to the taxpayer. There's no supervisor here who rides public transit every day, so what we have is nothing but hypocrisy and lies. If there's zero carbon, then there's zero oxygen from plants. I know there's a few crazies who don't even know basic science. The checklist for developers, this item says that it's going to be great for legal protection against project challenges. So that sounds like it's to the detriment of neighborhoods and to the benefit of big corporate developers that political theater Tara said she's against. Joel, there's the modern-day redlining known as VMT discrimination that goes well with the stupid growth alternatives to stop people from affording single-family homes. Those unaffordable stack-and-packs cannot be forever homes, as Karina claimed, because when people want children, they're not going to fit in a box unit anymore. And multifamily units are the hardest for firefighters to respond to. Why are there fires allowed in the so-called high fire severity zones via best projects and arsonists? There's no fire safety justice or transportation equality for East County or North County inland areas. Supposedly, this CAP update and associated programs will help improve air quality and health outcomes. How will this update specifically help the residents of Imperial Beach? What equity? Are these programs going to purify the sewage water? If Nora's in denial that there's a public health crisis, then how can anything be addressed? Or is there a cap on telling the truth and making real positive change for the environment and health? How many jobs and lives will be lost for the transition to dirty lithium-based energy? No, thank you. Zero carbon, zero life. Enough.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to our next speaker.
Hi, this is Catherine Rhodes. First, I was going to say, what a thorough report. There's over 3,800 pages of this. I haven't actually finished reading it or anything like that. But what I wanted to talk about is what I feel is a plan to reduce greenhouse gases in San Diego County for the whole county. It has to do with Sandag and the Airport Authority. So anyway, a couple of years ago, federal law changed to allow airport revenue to be used off-site for transit. But Sandag so far has gotten $0 from the Airport Authority.
think back in the day, they were going to get like $600 million or some big amount of money from the airport for transit. So far, they've got, after 6 years, we've gotten $0 from them. So a way to reduce greenhouse gases. The first is to confirm that airport revenue with the FAA, that airport revenue can be used for the airport project for transit to the airport. And then it could also be used for transit in general. That means you could actually, and here's where I always throw out my La Playa plan for full tidelands reclamation. When I talk about a full tidelands reclamation, I'm talking about creating a corridor, a transportation corridor from the border up to Pacific Beach along our tidelands. The way our tidelands were created is the engineering that was used in 1850. So since 1850, we haven't moved forward with engineering. It's like very basic. And so what you do is you take out all the junky.
Thank you. Your time is up. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
All right, thank you so much. I want to first thank all of the advocates and everyone engaged in joining us today. I want to thank our team for working so diligently on this issue and providing us with very clear direction upon input from community and stakeholders, et cetera. So, in order to really implement this plan effectively, the Climate Action Plan, we must fully prioritize equity, especially for our frontline communities as we transition into a greener future. I happen to represent a district, District 1, which includes communities like San Isidro, Logan Heights, National City, and Imperial Beach, Nestor, Sherman, et cetera. Communities that for many, many years have been impacted by environmental pollution and due to long historic environmental racism and unjust policies. And so we have had practices such as freeway construction through low-income communities, lack of transportation, green space, and access to quality food that have led to prolonged unhealthy impacts. And so we know that because of that, many youth in areas like Barrio Logan are 3 times more likely to suffer from respiratory issues than other parts in San Diego. And you heard today firsthand, right, about the impacts of our transboundary pollution and water pollution that have impacted our local beaches. And so these types of public health and environmental crises have been taking place in our region for decades. And so we have an opportunity to address this historical disinvestment by filling a gap in the Climate Action Plan. Wildfire risks, we know, have made insurance unaffordable or unavailable in many of the high fire hazard areas. And so, one of the things that I will be advocating for today is the fire safe and DMT vehicles traveled efficient smart growth alternative, which promotes building housing in safer areas and reduces risk for first-time home buyers. I think that building in high fire areas will only perpetuate the inequities faced by communities of concern, as these homes are not only unaffordable, but also unsafe. And if we go back and we think about the amount of resources and challenges that we had, particularly around the recent flood, if that is not an example of us being very vigilant and understanding how doing things in areas that we're not supposed to, how it impacts it and how we underinvest at times can create long-term problems. Not sure what other examples we need. And so in our quest to build stronger and healthier communities, I'm going to ask my colleagues to support staff recommendations and make a motion. The goal here is that we really plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve air quality, and protect public health within the goal of achieving it net zero carbon emissions by 2045. I want to make sure that we support the sustainable land use framework, which will create walkable communities and preserve green spaces that are much needed in communities throughout the region. And then also the county's equity implementation framework is a critical step towards institutionalizing climate equity. The framework must ensure that frontline communities, such as those in District 1, are prioritized at every phase of CAP implementation. So equity has to be the guiding principle to make the cap truly work, and we must guarantee equitable implementation. That's why I recommend that the county release publicly available quarterly monitoring data in addition to annual reports to track progress and ensure accountability. So with that, I think my colleagues and I all received staff recommendations in a sheet, and so I'm going to read through them to tell you exactly how my motion stands, and then what I'll do is I'll also share with you prepared the information so that you have it. And I think Supervisor Desmond, somebody from my team, will make sure that you get a copy of it, but we will also put it on the screen so that you can see it. So with staff recommendations, I want to make sure my motion is to adopt the CAP update, which is item A. So we're going to go ahead and put it up on the thing. And then go ahead and support the smart growth alternatives. I would like to support 1A, which is the fire safe and BMT efficient alternative. And then under 2A, I would like to recommend that we support the 2A, which is integrate smart growth alternative concepts to existing ongoing efforts. And then also 2C, which is options for evaluation of implementation of geographic-based smart growth alternatives, which talks about smart growth overlay, incentives for development within smart growth areas, infrastructure studies, zoning and or land use changes, and disincentives for development outside of smart growth areas. So want to make sure that we include all of those. Now, I did meet, and so I'm just going to, I also want to add a component, which is the Environmental Justice Working Group. I did have conversations with many of our stakeholders, and I want to say that I absolutely think that this is critical and important. And my recommendation is that we would direct the CAO or designee to convene the environmental justice work, which is really the request that many folks had around the Equity and Community and Resilience Fund, right? Because we created this project almost 2 years ago, and we haven't had an opportunity for the team to meet. And that was the whole concept or the idea behind this. And so convening this Environmental Justice Working Group, which was established by the board back in January 25th, 2023, 1 year ago, sorry, and no later than January, so that we can make sure that they're meeting no later than January 2025, and then quarterly thereafter, to advise staff on implementing of the Climate Action Plan and including the following items. Advice on the development and adoption of climate equity indicators, as this was mentioned, like the environmental screen, Healthy Places Index, and climate equity tools to integrate equity into all climate investments. Establish a benchmark at least 20% of a CAP investments in historically underinvestment communities through the county budget process, and provide input on actions that meet these benchmarks. I'm assuming we'll be using the equity tool, but I want to make sure that it's actually, that we are very clear about what we want to add. We provide input to county departments on expenditures and deliverables for the implementation of the CAP. Also receive updates on the implementation of the CAP, including data-driven metrics of emissions, reductions, health equity, and cost effectiveness of CAP measures, such as through report cards and online dashboards. I want to make sure that we review the progress of the CAP measures and reaching our county's climate goals through the lens of the equity implementation framework, and engage on regional resiliency policies related to impacts of climate change or vulnerable communities, such as extreme heat, floods, and wildfires. I also want to make sure we're elevating regional collaboration and coordination with other jurisdictions on climate mitigation and resiliency efforts. So that would be C in the overall documentation and the staff recommendation. I do want to add for the record, though, that the conversation that I had with many of the stakeholders is that having, serving on CARB and also on, APCD, and having worked in this world of environmental justice and being an advocate around environmental justice and reproductive justice for almost 30 years, one of the things that's always concerning me, and I shared this with our stakeholders, is that when you create funds, it's sort of like you start putting things to the side, and then you can only get the money from there. In this case, I'm requesting that we create a fund because I want to make sure that we're holding everyone accountable. But I want to make sure that we're clear that the $650 million that we have, right, 650, we should be using equity from a lens of equity at all times. And as we think about as I started this conversation, the number of communities that have been underinvested for decades and have been impacted because of environmental racism and injustices, it is super important that we actually are looking at it as a holistic way. In my perfect world, all of this is integrated into actually how we do our budgets in this county, and it's in good faith what we do. But government has always worked for people, and so today I'm asking that we allocate this specific funding so that that serves as the minimum and that we check the box. Make sense? It's very important that we understand that in order for us to ensure that our communities are safe and healthy and are thriving and not just surviving, and that they do have access to health, healthy quality of life, we got to do better. And so to me, this is a minimum benchmark of what we're going to do with a climate action plan that is going to help us to take our communities forward. And I think it'll be a good first step. And it's extremely important that stakeholders and community members are engaged in this process as experts, as is our staff. And so I'm very grateful to the staff for all of the work that you've done and for being open to having these conversations. So it's a very long motion, but I wanted to make sure I give you the feedback as to how, why this was important, because I've seen it in the scoping plan on CARB and other areas where we create these subcommittees and they are not integrated or not end up being part of the actual fabric of the initiatives and agencies that we really want to go. So that's my motion.
I'm happy to second. Yeah, first I just want to thank the team. You all have worked incredibly hard. We've had lots and lots of conversations and updates over the last many years. You know, I think, frankly, this board was not left in a great position. When I came on, we were in the middle of a lawsuit, getting sued and losing for a climate action plan that was so bad it didn't even meet sort of basic minimum standards. And I think we've come a hugely long way towards a climate action plan that's meaningful and makes sense and is workable and has taken into account the input of the community and has done a lot of due diligence and engaged in a lot of community consultation. So, you know, I think certainly you got some strong direction from the board initially that we needed to fix the mess that we'd been left in, but you all did all the heavy lifting and have done, I think, a really great job. You know, this is an issue that's been boiling for a long time, right? I mean, this climate action plan is the result of decisions made by this board, you know, 15 years ago. And this climate action plan has been sort of 15 years in the making. And it's unfortunate that it's taken us this long. But these are really critical issues. It's not just about compliance with state law, but it's also about investing appropriately in our region's future. And I really appreciate the orientation of the chair to center equity as we really think about how we move forward on climate. So I could say a lot more because I've said a lot over the last many, many years, but just thank you all and happy to second the chair's motion.
Thank you. Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Chair. Hey, I got a question for you, I guess, initially, and then a comment. So what's historically under-invested communities? Is there a definition for that, or is there metrics for that? Is that, and I guess secondly, is that only in the unincorporated areas?
Oh, you know, underinvested communities, there's a lot of data we've used during COVID. We used the health equity index. We can use Cal Screen. There's data to support this. And so at times government is very minimal in how it frames it.
I just want to know what the metrics, so I understand the COVID stuff, health equity index, but I just want to make sure we, you know, there's many parts of the county that that need this.
Yeah, so if you want to think about, you know, I guess there's areas in San Marcos where you have large components of contamination where they would be considered underinvested communities. High levels of pollution. There's some in Escondido. It's not just Logan Heights, not just San Isidro. AB 617 has identified a couple of, specific in the border. And so I think we can give you a list of some of those communities and where they're at. But I want to make sure that as we're looking at them, they are throughout the county, and we've identified them not only in the county, and feel free to, for the staff, if you have any other specific information you want to share. But I know for a fact that we've used it under CARB, under APCD, and a lot of the work that we've done under decarbonization and other initiatives throughout the county. Does anybody?
Okay, and then I guess, from staff's perspective, I'm just curious, there's the fire safe and VMT efficient under the smart growth alternatives. We didn't have to include any of the smart growth alternatives. I understand it's part of the chair's motion, and then staff in their presentation actually said if we did include those, that they should really be part of the sustainable land use framework and not the cap. So I'm just curious, if we include it in the cap, what does that do? I guess, does that make the cap now all of a sudden a land use document? How's that going to have an effect on the cap by accepting a smart growth alternative?
Through the chair, Supervisor Desmond, I'm going to ask for County Council to help answer the question in regards to what the board is required to consider today.
Sure. It sounded like there were a few parts to your question, Supervisor. First question was confirming that the board is not required to adopt any of the smart growth alternatives. That's correct. The second piece was if the board provides direction today on any of the smart growth alternatives, how does that affect the cap? My understanding of the motion proposed by the chair and seconded by the vice chair is that the cap would be adopted with its EIR, and then the motion would also include the staff's recommendation, which is to pursue the fire safe and VMT efficient alternative with the county's ongoing land use planning efforts, such as the smart land use framework and other programs. And staff can correct me if I mischaracterized that. Meaning it would not have an impact on the cap. It would be a parallel working plan.
Is that the motion, I guess, from the chair that you wanted, that this fire safe and VMT efficient is going to be under the sustainable land use framework, or is it going to be part of the cap?
Part of the cap.
I guess to the chair, your motion.
No, I understand, but you want to go ahead and have them.
Yes. Chairwoman Vargas, just to be clear on your intent. So if the intent is to, A, adopt the cap in its own lane, if you will, and B, pursue the specific smart growth alternative you identified, we can do those as two separate actions. The only question I would have is if you would like for staff to pursue the fire safe, VMT efficient smart growth alternative through the sustainable land use framework, or if you are directing that we pursue that land use and through its own effort, that we proceed with that as quickly as possible.
Well, I mean, what are you recommending?
We would recommend that this gets folded into the sustainable land use effort that is currently underway.
You're the expert. So,
thank you.
Okay, and I guess I get that, but I really don't support this fire safe and VMT efficient smart growth alternative. I really like to see the sustainable land use framework come out of that with that as an option, I guess, but instead of already picking it. This fire safe and VMT efficient is no growth. This is no growth. We have very, very few areas that are VMT efficient in the unincorporated areas. And then to say they can't be in a high or very high fire risk even narrows that down even further. So this is basically no growth. And I'm not surprised that the environmental agencies picked this, because I think it's in a large part because of the situation we're in, where we don't have any housing, is because the environmental agencies suing every housing project that's ever been presented in the last decade and a half, and just adding more and more and more costs. They were able to kill the Lilac project up on the 15, also the Newland Sierra project up to 15. 15, and we've had more and more and more and more cars driving up the 15 into Riverside County to afford housing. This fire safe and VMT efficient is no growth. It's not smart growth, it's no growth. And it's unfortunate, I think, to have that as part of it. I would rather just see the sustainable land use framework come up and kind of percolate itself, as opposed to saying it's got to have the fire safe and VMT efficient. We're going to be back to no housing once again. So I don't think I can support it with already choosing that smart growth alternative. I think we should let the sustainable land use framework percolate on its own as opposed to imposing this into it. So thank you very much.
Okay, Supervisor Montgomery-Stead.
Thank you very much. I will add on to the thanks for really methodically going through this process based on, the lawsuits and the history, of course, that I have not been here for, but I see that, we have a good group of folks at the table with all different types of interests that are supporting the CAP. So I want to say thank you to you all for facilitating that process and really taking in that input so that communities, members, and groups and organizations feel some sense of ownership over the CAP. So thank you for that. And also, just a part of this conversation, of course, when we talk about climate change, we also, have to talk about how much housing is linked to our climate. How we choose to build out is extremely important. It's always going to be a conversation, especially here in San Diego and in California. And the chair mentioned this, but one of the things that I evaluate when I'm going through all of this, all of the letters, all of the comments, the backup material, everything, is also the fact that we talk about heat and the wildfires, but we did experience the floods here January 22nd and afterwards. And we, thankfully, and thank you to my colleagues, we went into action to try to help folks because insurance was an issue, right? Types of insurance, that was an issue that is still to this day left some people without a home. And so we're experiencing that in real time. And, 13 years ago, when the general plan update was moving forward, I could be wrong, but I don't think that was as much of an issue as it is now. People are being denied outright the ability to insure their homes, and also for others, costs are rising. So that just has to be a part of this conversation. I will personally also just say that, I really want to build as much as we possibly can. I see, talent leaving our region. There are a lot of things going on, but I just believe that there's a way to do it in a very smart way. And I also think that that will require our operations within the county to be very consistent and to be able to streamline appropriately processes, on that everyday basis. What I always try to stress up here, that at the end of the day, when we land on a decision, then that decision and how we implement it, how we serve people that come into our doors is going to impact heavily, the productivity. It will impact heavily the productivity. So it's one thing to make these decisions. It's another thing to make sure that our intent is being it goes through the system to the most granular level. So I do want to stress that as well. I am supportive of this motion. It is very clear about just, providing direction to come back. I will also say thank you to staff for meeting with me around all of the different plans that we have coming forward, all of the different studies that we, still have yet to, give input on, because it can be a bit frustrating, right, to have all of these, we're juggling a lot of these different concepts, and we need to make them real so that there is an expectation from the development community as well. They know exactly, what the what the barriers are and how we will help them overcome however we can. And so, as we move forward, I am looking forward to building out the sustainable land use framework and what that looks like with all of the input that you all have received prior to me being in this seat, and what we can do to build smartly, still give people opportunities to own their first homes, but also give people the ability to afford rent here, which, hey, that's a dream, but that's what the goal is, I believe. So as we move forward, I'm looking forward to you all and what integrating these alternatives into the sustainable land use framework, and having that be the center of all of these studies and everything that we come up with, because then we can truly determine what our numbers will look like. So thank you very much for all of the work, and I do support the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to thank staff for all their hard work. Every week you get new orders from us. Check this, check that, check this, check that. And I appreciate how hard you work, and I wish we were more consistent with the direction we're giving you. I'd just like to point out to my colleagues, here's the Cedar Fire map. It came deep into the city of San Diego. So does that mean that the city of San Diego shouldn't exist there because one of the big fires went there? Fires don't see borders. They don't care about borders. Whether we build in Alpine or Lakeside or Ramona isn't going to change the number of fires. It's going to put people more in risk. We sent a man to the moon over 60 years ago. We can certainly make evacuation plans. But the one thing that really irks me about all this is back in January, I decided to take my wife out to a winery in Temecula on a Sunday. And it was bumper to bumper on a Sunday afternoon from Nordal, that's in Escondido, up to 15 in. And we're completely ignoring that and saying, oh, that carbon is good carbon because those people have to commute to San Diego for their job. But the carbon that we could reduce by having more homes in our villages closer to their workplace, we're going to ignore that, and we're going to pursue a plan that literally shuts down all housing in East County. And if you were to look at the Otay fire, that would wipe out the other unincorporated. And I love that people are passionate, and I appreciate it, but I want people to use real science, not junk science or political science. And when I look at the numbers, and it wouldn't be hard to count the cars going to Riverside every day, and that would give us a strong indicator of the housing that we missed out on that's creating pollution. And when we think about what could be most affordable for ownership, not for renting, who cares about renting? I want people to own. I want people to afford the home. We've got trades that work hard, that earn good livings and can't afford a house, except for to live in Riverside and commute, or Tijuana and commute. And yet, what we're doing today is absolutely going to stop any kind of affordable housing in our lifetime. And I'm just perplexed, because I thought we cared about housing. I thought our goal was to see if we could get more houses online. We've worked so hard to get to this point, and then to give it all away because some people from the coast showed up who are creating science and not paying attention to any of the actual transportation patterns. I've obviously lost the attention of my colleagues, so go ahead and vote.
I'm going to go ahead. We have a motion and a second. I just want to add that there is a checklist that comes with the cap that will be saving developers time and money regardless of the smart growth alternative that is chosen. All right, motion, second, please vote.
Roll call vote, sorry.
Hey, just real quick, Chair.
No.
I apologize. I just want to, Chair, I'd love to support the climate action plan, and I came prepared to do that today, but I just can't with that killing the housing with the fire safe and VMT efficient. So I'd love to support it, but I can't today. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want to bifurcate so he can vote for it?
So you said,
He's already walked.
he said no? Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Supervisor Anderson's a no. Supervisor Desmond, you're a no?
Yes, I'm a no.
Okay, Supervisor Montgomery-Stepp?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson-Remer?
Yep.
And Chairwoman Vargas?
Vargas, yes.
That motion passes with Supervisor Anderson and Supervisor Desmond voting no, all their supervisors being present and voting aye.
Thank you. All right, that concludes the business for the board today, right? Oh, we have to go to non-agenda public comment. So we'll now resume with non-agenda public comment. Can you please call the remainder of the non-agenda public speakers?
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We do have 32 total requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda, 6 individuals in person, and 26 requesting to speak by phone. For those that requested to speak via phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll go ahead and begin with the in-person speakers. As your name is called, please come forward and stand on the arrows until it is your turn to speak at the podium. You'll then have 2 minutes to address the board, and if you could please begin by stating your name for the audio record. And I'd like to invite forward the first 3 individuals, Summer Light, Mike Bullock, and B. Miller.
My name is Summer Light. I'm here reaching out from the communities of Tara Lawson-Remer, the Elfin Forest community, and from the San Elijo Hills community, represented by Jim Desmond. In 2021, the Department of Public Works put excessive amounts of asphalt on a buffer parcel of the San Marcos landfill. It's next to homes, and it's in clear view of homes and trails. Currently, we have over 400 people from San Elijo Hills and Elfin Forest who have signed petitions stating we want this cleaned up and the landfill managed, supporting wildlife. The taxpayers spent $350,000 to bring native plants to support wildlife and beautify the San Marcos landfill. In addition, in the San Elijo Hills Amendment Plan, it stated that this particular parcel was to be left untouched and managed as a wildlife preserve. The community has secured a bid from a county-hired contractor to get this cleaned up. For only $14,000, it's a small amount considering us taxpayers spent $350,000 to beautify the landfill. And considering millions have been donated by the community to protect wildlife, we would like your support. We were told by Aurelia DeBral, who was a deputy director of DPW, that a supervisor could make the call to get this removed. We're asking for your support. It's very important to us. Thank you.
Feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, Honorable Board, in 2007, the Cleveland National Forest Foundation filed a suit against Sandag's RTP. Attorney General Jerry Brown did not join that suit. In 2011, the Cleveland National Forest Foundation again filed suit against Sandag's RTP. Attorney General Harris joined that suit because Sandag could not ignore California's climate mandate and its plan to achieve that mandate. Her work established that the CARB scoping plan cannot be ignored. She took on bad actors. Sandag was, and still is, a bad actor. Sandag still ignores the CARB scoping plan, which calls for a 25% reduction in vehicle miles traveled by 2030 with respect to 2018. She stated that the CARB scoping plan was about climate stabilization, which is still a foreign concept to many. She wrote in her first letter to Sandag that the scoping plan could not be ignored because it was about climate stabilization, the objective of CEQA. The scoping plan describes the needed mitigation measures to achieve that reduction. The plan says pricing is essential. It calls for price parking. It called for a road use charge. Sandag spent millions to make a political show of removing an admittedly flawed road use charge from its 2021 RTP. The CARB scoping plan is clear that California needs a well-designed road use charge. The county is responsible for maintaining its roads.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And just for the record, we need you to state your name.
Yeah, Mike Bullock.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll call the remaining in-person, Michael Brando or JP Therberg. Seeing no movement in the chamber, we'll go to the phone callers. So we'll now hear from those that request to speak by phone. Again, when it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted. You'll hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Again, I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we'll go ahead and begin with our first caller.
As I told you before, this is my person uses the name Audra. I'm at the 9/11 memorial on Midway. And it's really sad to just hear names of the people who lost their lives on that day. And how, you know, if you believe what we've been told actually happened, then it would terrify you to know that Islamic terrorists are crossing our border, leaving their documents behind so that they can disappear into our nation. So for those of you that want open borders, if that's what you believe that happened, then you should really be thinking about what that means to have terrorists on the watch list actually invade our nation. What good could that come from that? So it's sad to see, though, that we're not really even being truthful about what happened. It was our own government that did this to us. It was a controlled demolition. There were no planes that flew into the Twin Towers, and they demolished Building 7. It was a missile that flew into the Pentagon. But we're continuing to perpetuate the lies, which is even more sad, because the people deserve to be honored for what actually happened. Then we sent people off to war to fight a battle that wasn't ours to fight, and we lost even more people during that time. And so as we continue to perpetuate the lies, we should be thinking about what's actually happening on our border. And if you feel secure in your nation, when you do actually have terrorists on watch lists that are coming across, and who knows where they are. So I think you guys need to really think about that. And if you're willing to lose more people due to something happening that is not going to be able to be stopped. So, I mean, let alone the fact that, you know, little 5-year-olds can be raped, and we're protecting the predator just so the victim can feel safe. None of it makes sense. And we need to quit living in this place of just willful ignorance.
Thank you. We'll go to our next speaker.
Your name. Hello, my name is Anna.
Peggy, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Hold it closer. My name is Ariana Garcia, and I am speaking on behalf of Peggy Walker.
No, you can't.
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. We can't hear you. Did you say you're speaking on behalf of Peggy?
Yes.
Under the board rules and procedures, we can't cede time. So you cannot speak on behalf of Peggy.
Okay, can you come back to me?
This is Peggy's time to talk.
Yes, this is Peggy. Can you come back to me? I'm driving, so I can't speak.
This is your time to speak, Peggy. We're trying to get through our non-agenda. If you'd like to give your comments now, you can give your comments now. If not, you can give them at the next board meeting as well. Or you can email them as well.
All right. I'll give them to you right now. Thank you.
Okay.
What I wanted to say is that as a public health advocate and youth mentor, I want to call attention to mounting concern by parents, educators, public health, and medical communities over failure of Prop 64 to protect children from marijuana intoxication and product availability to youth. In spite of promises to safeguard kids, an array of illegal flavored vape products with THC as high as 90% are found sold at local smoke shops, falling into young people's hands. Pot deliveries to minors go unchecked. Simultaneously, we have a vape epidemic, and studies link vaping with marijuana-induced psychosis, chronic vomiting, and hallucinations. Prop 64, in fact, has opened a Pandora's box. Snack-like marijuana products that paves a way for illegal products.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to our next caller.
Hi, my name is Ron McGill. I'm calling to leave a comment on the horse and dogs and any animals really that are at the Artesian Road ranch or whatever you want to call it. There have been repeated calls for changes to this situation. These people have been abusing animals and neglecting them to the point of them dying. And the welfare checks, as they're called, have resulted in no action. These laws, animal welfare laws, need to be enforced, and they're not. I just call on the commissioners to please look past money. I know these people are breeding horses for monetary purposes and things like racehorsing. Is that worth causing immeasurable suffering and cruelty? It never is, and the law says so. It's your job to make sure the law is enforced. Please do the bare minimum and actually enforce the law and make sure these people no longer harbor animals to torture and eventually let die. Animals die of colic, starvation, they're in their own feces regularly. This is all documented. This is all animal abuse. This is all cruelty, and this is all unacceptable. Please do the bare minimum and make sure that it's not just a drive-by welfare check and no action taken. Please do the bare minimum. Enforce animal welfare laws now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Megan Stewart, and I have noticed how much the board is concerned about the health of all San Diego citizens. As someone who has experience working with children who have experienced secondhand smoke exposure in their own home, I would like to share some information regarding an issue that has a disproportionate impact on Black Americans and Hispanic Latino Americans in San Diego. The Surgeon General estimated that secondhand smoke causes the premature death of 41,000 adults and more than 400 infants each year. Smoke can seep into units from other units where smoking may be happening, possibly causing harm to those who may not even know it, as well as come from shared areas such as balconies and outdoor areas, and can even travel through tiny cracks in the crevices in walls, floors, electrical lines, and plumbing. Last month, the city of Carlsbad passed a comprehensive ban on the smoking and vaping in or around multifamily residential buildings. 100 cities and counties in California have adopted a version of this policy to date, Carlsbad being the first in San Diego County to act. According to an article in the Times of San Diego, public opinion polls in the cities of San Diego, Chula Vista, and Imperial Beach show that residents want this policy. Over 500 multi-unit housing residents participated in a 2023 survey. Most participants had been bothered by secondhand smoke in their home. The overwhelming majority of respondents, 87%, indicated they would support a smoke-free multi-unit housing policy. May I respectfully suggest that our county consider a similar proposition to protect and ensure that everyone has the right to breathe clean, smoke-free air. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller.
Gambler here. How you guys doing? Let me go in and explain my dilemma. 10 years ago, I had a difference of opinion regarding an assembly bill that would state vote by mail. 7 years ago, they made up shit and got rid of me based off of it. 6 years ago, you guys rehired me to give me a disability, 80% of my paycheck for the rest of my life, but that would require me to lie. I wasn't going to lie, and I had a conversation with Helen regarding that. Now, which leads me to a dilemma. I know voter fraud runs rampant in the vote-by-mail system. I also know that judges are elected and therefore can be selected. So me going that fashion would have been terrible. But I also know that there is an election law, subsection 18,501, that basically says that you guys will go to prison for about 2 to 3 years if fraud is discovered in the fashion that I stated. You guys have been covering it up, and you're going to continue covering it up until someone discovers it. Thank God you guys don't pay attention to what is happening in the world, because you would recognize the fact that there is several groups of people much more qualified and much more able to talk to you guys than I can, because I'm so freaking angry. They will discover the fraud. They will point out the dead people voting, voting from other counties and all that stuff all over the place, because you could go ahead and re-register anyone to vote and vote for them. You can re-register someone that lives in New York and vote for them here in California. There is no security check to prevent that from happening. You guys want to cover that up and pretend you could certify an election where you don't really know who won. That is the truth, and you're...
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to our next speaker.
Hi, my name's Karen Elger, calling regarding the animal cruelty and the horses and dogs on Artesian Road. The conditions these horses endure daily are not acceptable by any humane standard. 2 horses were left by their so-called caretakers to suffer and die painful deaths. Many reports from witnesses describing horses and dogs in heartbreakingly terrible condition. I asked the City Board of Supervisors not to be complicit in this cruelty. Please take action. Please have these animals removed before there is more death on this property. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We'll go to our next speaker.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Becky Rapp. I'm a parent and a member of my planning group. I come today to reiterate my request in asking you to support the American Cancer Society in urging Governor Newsom to veto Assembly Bill 1775. If this bill were to pass, it would significantly damage long-standing smoke-free workplace protections and promote on-site smoking, vaping, and consumption of highly addictive marijuana products. In addition, marijuana lounges are another step in normalizing and commercializing the drug to residents 21 years of age and older, those whose brains are not yet fully developed. Dr. Kevin Sabet, former White House drug policy advisor to President Obama, Bush, and Clinton, stated, "The DEA and FDA have held long-standing opinions that marijuana is a dangerous psychoactive drug, with science only becoming more damning. Major medical associations and surgeon generals agree marijuana is addictive and harmful. Study after study of users of today's high-potency THC products demonstrate damaging mental health impacts, including psychosis, schizophrenia, depression, and IQ loss. With September Suicide Prevention Month, we are reminded that marijuana products contain high-potency THC, changing the structure of the brain and interfering with decision-making. Our own San Diego County medical examiner stated that 39% of completed suicides under the age of 25 tested positive for THC. I'd like to ask why these warnings are not included on our website, and why are they not posted on billboards across our county? Perhaps this information could be included in newsletters emailed to constituents. Please urge the governor to veto AB 1775. This would be a great first step. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Hello. Thank you, members of the board, to give me the opportunity to speak. My name is Susanna Alexander, and I would like to know, why is the County Board of Supervisors complicit in animal cruelty? I suspect that the County Board of Supervisors are allowing for felony criminal animal cruelty. Why is the county repeatedly going back to the Netflix property if everything is okay? Why are you wasting the county taxpayer dollars on ongoing visits if everything is okay? Interim Director Steve Lejean was advised of the severe concern of neglect and abuse of the horses and other animals, and he refuses to enforce the law. He mentioned the statute of limitations were done, and when asked what the statute of limitations were, he mentioned, "I don't know." How shameful. So activists had to do his job and find out for him. He has no background even in animal welfare or experience. Please, please remove the horses and other animals on Artesian Road. Now, we are calling on Attorney General Rob Bonta to investigate for anyone suspect in aiding and abetting felony criminal animal cruelty. Please, please, again, remove the horses and other animals that are suffering right now on Artesian Road. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Lippett. As a public health practitioner, I wanted to revisit the county's impotent response to the grand jury's report on the health and law enforcement impacts of the county's decision to increase the availability, access, and use of high-potency marijuana. Its failure to identify public health and safety impacts of the program necessitated the grand jury to do so instead. The county asserts it publishes marijuana-related deaths, emergency department discharges, and hospitalizations on their online dashboards. That strategy is ineffective for warning the public of marijuana harms, since few people among the public would see it. Big Marijuana doesn't acknowledge the harms of its products to protect profits. The county's partnership with the industry censors itself on behalf of potential tax revenues. Both profit from maximizing use and addiction now. The board could have used its bully pulpit at county meetings. It could have asked its public health officer to address marijuana harms. It could have invited experts like ER physicians or addiction specialists. It did none of those things. The county's transition from prevention strategies to harm reduction was yet another gift to the industry. Preventing the initiation of marijuana use among adolescents prevents the ability of the industry from growing its future customer base. Harm reduction ensures marijuana use will continue unabated. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. We'll go to our next speaker.
It's truth first, Nora. I'm going to make sure your misinformation lies about the sewage are heard all over the South Bay. Second, last abuse force deception update didn't suggest that a horse that died while stuck in mud in 2023 was an acceptable way for an animal to die, or that a horse that died in 2024 being in conditions that led to colic was acceptable. Jim also gave a very short timeline of incidents. He skipped over the months of January to mid-July. Is that because somebody requested the public records from DAS up to July? Well, I'm still reading through those records, and what I found is negligence and dereliction of duty from both DAS and this board. So far, I see zero evidence that DAS physically inspected the horses to be able to accurately report on their condition. DAS's own video shows them walking by the property from a very far distance where you wouldn't even see if there's a sick or dead horse or not. And what about those Netwood dogs, some of which appear malnourished in county photos? On February 19th, the Netwood Irish setter allegedly bit neighbors and their dogs. There's dispatch reports for June 4th, 5th, 7th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. How much are all these dog patrols costing county taxpayers? Highlights include, quote, daily patrols for 7612 Artesian Road and 7735 Camino de Arriba. These patrols are a priority and shall be done once a day at minimum. Neighbors stated that Deborah has a hearing with the HOA. Officer Vallasuso and Officer Garcia, we met with owner Deborah Barkley to deliver a public nuisance declaration. Barkley stated she would not be signing the form. Barkley also stated she wanted to relinquish one of the dogs. I stated to Barkley that we are not currently taking relinquishment. Officer Galvin, Barkley refused to sign abatement paperwork. Dog Rusty was just claimed from NCAS. Public nuisance proceedings are currently in the appeal process. July 3rd, we are working with the county attorney on a warrant to inspect the property, end quote. Obviously, Jim, 50 yards away ain't good enough. I demand the new DAS director give a presentation on the abused Netwood dog and horse case. Not Jim, Tara, Strong, or Ebony. You guys aren't the experts, and you never read the reports. That's very cool.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to our next caller.
Hi, my name is Dave Engel. I'm also calling about the animal abuse on Artesian Road. I want to start with a quote from the California Democratic Party platform. This is from the Sustainable Community section on page 33, and I quote, The treatment of animals, including wildlife and domestic and farm animals, is a measure of the treatment of humans. Democrats take a stand against animal cruelty, end quote. Anyway, that is in the California State Democratic Party platform. And as far as I can see, it's not being adhered to in this situation here on Artesian Road, where we literally have horses eating out of a toilet. Horses have, colic, which is very painful. So the County Board of Supervisors needs to really fully investigate the conditions there and determine whether animal cruelty is in fact pervasive on this property and make sure that all the animals there are treated properly. I'm going to end this here. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller. Terry, it's your turn to speak. You may be muted. Terry, again, it's your turn to speak. You may be muted. You may need to unmute yourself. All right, Chairwoman Vargas, not seeing any response from Terry and having no other callers in the queue, that will conclude the request for non-agenda public communication this afternoon.
So with that, we thank everyone, and this meeting is adjourned.
The next regular meeting of the board will take place on Tuesday, September 24th at 9 a.m.